Hi, I'm Andrew Dubber. I'm the director of Music Tech Fest, and this is the MTF podcast. Now, one of the things we were going to do this month, until what with one thing and another we suddenly weren't going to be doing anymore, at least not until further notice, was to host the MTF Innovation Stage at Music Messe Frankfurt, which is Europe's biggest trade fair for music, with like tens of thousands of visitors coming from all over the world. Normally, wonderful opportunity to rub shoulders with brilliant musical minds. Spring 2020, not so much with the shoulder rubbing, please. But last year we were there running MTF Labs and the MTF Pro Labs, an innovation masterclass for industry execs drawing on the expertise, experience and creative tech skills of the MTF community. Beatboxer and more recently neuroscience and AI researcher Reaps One joined MTF's Michaela Magus to lead the MTF Pro Labs, and there were some pretty brilliant people in the room, from innovation managers for national airlines to large festival organisers and Hollywood cinematographers. And one of those people was a man called Doug Angelis, who's the co-founder and conference chair of A3E, an industry body dedicated to the future of advanced audio applications, music and entertainment technologies, and new content creation tools, and an educational partner to NAMM. So Doug's had a career in the music industries that most people could probably only dream of. His big start in the whole thing was fairly auspicious, recording the first 9 Inch Nails album with Flood in the Midi suite at Berklee College of Music, and he's gone on from there to spend a couple of decades working with the likes of New Order, Michael Jackson, Queen Latifah, Chaka Khan, Love and Rockets, Alicia Keys, No Doubt, as well as writing and producing music for TV shows like Bones, Alias, Cold Case, CSI, ER, and one of my favourites, Lie to Me, starring Tim Roth, for which Doug won a BMI Music Award. Now, Music Messe, when it moves pretty fast, and Doug had things to do and places to be, but I took the opportunity to sit down with him after the Innovation Masterclass and have a bit of a chat. So from Frankfurt last year, and looking forward to getting back there when that's a sensible thing to do, here's my conversation with Doug Angelis. Enjoy. Doug, thanks so much for joining us on the MTF podcast.
My pleasure.
You are here, I guess, as a representative or chair of A3E?
Yes, I'm one of the two co-founders of it, and I'm the conference chair.
What are the 3 A's?
The Advanced Audio and Applications Exchange.
And
So A3E was born out of the idea, after I was living in Los Angeles, I started doing a lot of television score, and I started working on my own a lot instead of, more traditionally working in the studio with a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. And when it came time to do another conference, I had done one earlier, and, kind of figure out what it should be about, I felt like it should be about developers. I felt like I had watched over the years of the music industry evolving so many of the great session players I knew from New York and Los Angeles going and becoming, creating sample libraries and building all these amazing, being part of building these incredible tools that we as composers were using making music. Now it was all packaged into plugins for us. And I just thought, wow, developers are your co-writers now. They're just in the studio with you all day making music, and you're lying if you don't say that you pick certain plugins and certain things for certain creative applications, because right away it's going to get you a third of the way through the job.
Sure.
So you absolutely go to things by what they do musically, And so I just felt like, wow, it was really important to bring technology-focused musicians together with developers, the people who were really behind us and supporting us and creating the tools that we were really using now all the way around. Mm-hmm. So that was the birth of A3. So the applications part of it was, what are the applications they're developing? What applications are there for the things they're developing? So that started in 2013 in Boston, actually.
Okay. Well, you've just walked out of the MTF Pro Labs, the Innovation Masterclass. What happened?
Oh, wow. So what happened? It's a lot happens when you're in a situation like that. First, your frustration level, you walk into any situation, and I think when you're somebody has so much kind of on your mind all the time about all this, you're always in this sort of state of, even if you don't realize it, but you're in this sort of state of tension because you just want.
Right.
You want.
There's a gap between where things are and where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, and you just want. Yeah, it's like you want everything, but you don't even need to define it. You just want.
Yeah.
And you get in there, and at first you just want, Like, I want to get started. I want to know what these guys do. Well, I want this. And then all of a sudden, somebody starts to talk, in this case, Reeps, and you just realize, okay, you don't need to think like that anymore because everybody in here gets this.
Right.
So we don't need to be in a rush to get anywhere right now. We all get it, and we're going in a direction. Okay, good. I don't need to feel this way anymore.
Sure.
And that's a really amazing feeling in a room like that. So we all see it totally different. I mean, no question, when I listen to each person in that room talk, we all grab onto different things. We're all moved by different things. There's things that some people are totally moved by in this world that I'm not at all, that don't even touch me.
Yeah.
And the things that other people are that just blow my mind, and maybe the person sitting next to me doesn't quite feel it the way I do. That's how it works.
Sure.
But you all realize that you all have that childlike desire to want to feel that, and the thoughts about how to keep going and going and going. So it's tricky because when you're outside of that environment and you try to do that, you're often surrounded by people who don't want to keep up with that. Because it's exhaustive. They don't have that same desire to want like that. So they kind of just keep going, can we finish? It's like, no, not till it's done.
So to be clear to people who weren't in the room, what happened and what did you think, that bit's kind of interesting?
Well, I thought, Reeps One was giving a talk that was really brilliant on breaking down your own mental barriers in order to get from where you are to the next place, sure. Right? And he was using technology to kind of show how that can be done in the different mindsets of that. He was taking you through the mental paces of that, which I always say to people, when they ask what A3 is, it's a psychology show to me. It always has been. It's not a music technology show. It's a music psychology show. And it's about the mental paces of what takes a person from point A to point Z, right? And it's always different for everybody. But I never want to talk about the equipment. I want to talk about the mental process behind doing it. And I think with him, what was so interesting about it is he's doing it with his voice.
Yeah.
So you don't have a piece of gear getting in the way.
Yeah, for sure. But it's about mindset.
So he's a great spokesperson for it, not only because he's so articulate and brilliant with it, which he is, but there's also a purism to it with him because there is no piece of gear. There is no turntable. There is no set of pads. There's nothing in there that you're kind of going, ooh, that's his little magic wand. It's like, it's just there.
And yet there's innovation going on.
And music.
Yeah.
Incredible music. I mean, it's amazing to hear what he's able to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of music, let's start at the beginning. You're 18 years old. You're at Berklee College of Music. Yeah. What's the game plan?
Well, it wasn't Berklee. I mean, I loved Berklee.
Yeah.
I wanted to go there so bad, but the truth was I grew up in music, like pop music. And I grew up loving synthesizers. I mean, I started riding my bike to the music store when I was 8 years old to play with synthesizers every single day.
Were you one of these posters of synths on the wall? DX7 posters?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, even before Mini Moogs. I still have my first, the guy who taught me, who worked at that music store when I'd ride my bike every day, later on gave me the Korg Monopoly. That was the first one that I learned on. So I still have it in my studio now. So this is like, late 70s.
Yeah.
And then I got into the early 80s and I just fell in love with new wave music and electronic music. I mean, so just talking about Annie Lennox in the room in there, and I'm just going, these are my people in here now.
Yeah.
So Berklee, it was a strange environment for me, and I didn't know that till I got there. That's the truth. I mean, the truth was I was sitting in rooms with people who were, Wynton Marsalis's kids.
Right.
And I was, Simon Le Bon's bastard child, or Nick Rhodes, really.
Yeah.
So that, and...
But that was about being a virtuoso more than it was about expression through...
Yes, and so what moved me musically was layers and textures and the intricacy of that early synth work and how it would all interact together and all that. That fascinated me, not bebop scales and those things. And that stuff fascinated me more and more as I got older. We're at 17 years old at this point,
Yeah.
So for me, Berklee was it was great, but I very quickly found myself going to a studio and getting an internship. And I was a good programmer, so I immediately started running what they called the Midi room. We had a Midi room, you know, the weird room. Down, it was downstairs.
Yeah, and it was smaller than all of the other rooms.
Little tiny, it was the Midi room.
Yeah.
It was for the little, it was like mini almost, you know, it was like Midi and mini were confused at the time, you know. So I ran the Midi room. And that studio was owned by the band The Cars. They had just sold it to two gentlemen one was a record producer who I had been working with. The other one was also a record producer who now is still, I think, one of the heads of the MP&E department at Berklee, the Mendelsohn brothers. So I worked for them, and that was kind of where I got my start, and they taught me a ton, and I had a great programming background already, so I was the guy that could work the E3 and work all those things and play with digital audio and samples and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me that you mentioned textures as part of music making, because it's something that I, as a teenager was always fascinated by. And when Head Like a Hole came out, I could point to it, the 9 Inch Nails record, and say, this is what I mean when I talk about textures. And you recorded that. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me how that came about.
That came about from the Midi room. The Midi room. Yeah, no, it was a great room. I was working with all different artists in Boston that were kind of experimenting in electronic stuff and rock, regular stuff too. Yeah. And I got a call one day from his manager saying, can we book time with you in the Midi room? Yeah. And he was, obviously, that was the first record, so he was no different than anybody else on the planet at that point. He was no different than any...
He was just some guy named Trent.
Just some random thing, Yeah. So we got in to do the random thing, and what came in with the random thing, though, was Flood.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's not quite so random.
No. Yeah. And I didn't even know he was going to be there. I didn't know much about the project at all, to be honest. I got there to do the job, and in walked Trent and Flood, and Flood was just a beast. We did 5 straight days with no breaks at all.
I imagine that being mixed quite loud too.
Never left. We never left. It was just in the room. It was ass kicking, to be totally honest. It was a really ass kicking thing, but it was it was interesting. When you talk about innovation, sometimes you don't realize, because you're too new to know what innovation even is, right? I think I was just really lucky because I walked into some of my earliest recording projects, that being one of my earliest ones. Yeah. And, in came a Mac Plus, where Digital Performer, which was Performer at the time, right? It was pretty much just a triangle and and a pause button, right? But Trent he was looped. If you listen in Terrible Lie, there was these weird little voices and things that were being looped, and it was the first time I'd ever seen anything be looped, know? And the program was quite sophisticated. And obviously, Flood is a brilliant programmer too. So, you were in there with people that were... Trent at the time was actually working at a studio in Cleveland. Okay. He was also an engineer. He worked at he was like a project studio guy at a Cleveland studio. Mm-hmm. So we all were, everybody kind of was, and they were just such innovative minds, and you didn't really realize that's not how normal stuff happens. Right? You're not weren't in there making, a sort of a album-oriented rock, maybe, or pop jazz album, and we've done it the same way 55,000 times. It was like, this was being done really differently, and you don't even know because it's new. Yeah.
Because there wasn't, particularly outside of sort of the sort of German industrial scene, there wasn't a lot of things that had kind of touch points with. No. So you must have felt like kind of inventing something on the spot.
You were not knowing you were. Uh-huh. But I remember recording the guitars on it. We used a Yamaha REX 50. Do you remember that box? Vaguely. It was sort of like an XBX 90, but it was flat. It was a tabletop version of it.
Oh, right. Wow.
And it was like an SBX 90 Lite, right? And it was a tabletop version. It had a patch that was distortion. Yeah. That was all those guitars on Head Like a Hole. That's just straight through that box. No, there's no amps. It was just a tweaked out version of that processor making those just ripping tones, and so much of it was just the way it was processed, the way it was done. I remember my favorite part of that whole session if you know that record, in the song Terrible Lie, there's a moment where everything mutes for a second, then comes back on. It pauses. Mm-hmm. That was a mistake of trying to hit the mute button, hitting the solo button by accident. And it wrote in the automation.
Right.
And that weird move stayed all the way through the final version of that, and it's still in there. And it always blows my mind because, that's one of those moments where it's like so much of innovation comes out of accident, And
it's my favorite song on the record. So
so much weird stuff comes out of accidents, you know?
That's amazing.
So...
Wow. But you kind of tell the story as if you sort of stumbled into this Trent Reznor and Flood kind of experience. But had that been the case, it would have been a one-off. But then you've got Queen Latifah and Michael Jackson, and give me the list.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. So that turned into New York. So I did. It was a lot. It's a lot of them.
New Order, Shaka Khan.
Yeah, a lot of Shaka Khan stuff. Did Madonna stuff. Pet Shop Boys. I did some early hip hop like the Jungle Brothers and stuff like that.
Which Jungle Brothers?
I can't tell you right now. But all the way back at the beginning. I mean.
And No Doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a career there. There's a trajectory.
But you know what? That all had a reason too.
Yeah.
That wasn't really related so much to the Nine Inch Nails thing. That was really related to the fact that right after Nine Inch Nails, I got asked to go on this tour for this artist called Inner City.
Right.
And Inner City was not so popular in America, but over here, like in Britain and here.
In New Zealand, it was all in the clubs. It was like,
huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
So it was supposed to be this little short tour, and it was at the time like, when they said we're going to do house music, and you were like, whose house? What does that even mean? What's house music,
Yeah, concert in somebody's living room.
Yeah, because we didn't know about it in America. Right. It was big over here with S Express and bands like that. But
where it was invented, right?
Yeah, of course.
Somebody knew about it in America.
But not in Boston.
Right, okay.
In Boston, we did not know about it. I mean, It was just bubbling a little bit, So I went on this tour, and the idea was to take that record and play it live with all people. So to me, the way to do that was to play it all with sticks and pads because it was so rhythmic and there was such a sound to it. So we built this whole band around all these pads and sticks. The bass player played pads, the drummer played pads, and it was great. And so we went on the road, and it was supposed to be a couple weeks long, and it wound up being like 10 months we were on the road.
Wow.
With that long, long time because they kept having another single and another single and another single, and it just kept going. And from that, then I started working in New York with Kevin Saunderson and the whole Detroit techno gang. We lived in a loft with them. And then when I moved to New York, it was really that background. It was really being one of the very few people in America that was really exposed to that music at that level that led to all the remixes and all that stuff. Honestly, that's more where it came from than anything else because underground music was starting to bubble in New York. Guys like Danny Tenaglia and Roger Sanchez and those, Deep Dish and all those artists that was a bubbling thing. Chicago House was already going. Obviously, Inner City was really Chicago House. It was the girl was from Chicago. So it was kind of bubbling, and that led to working with like Arthur Baker and those different DJs, and then Lil Louis and the Chicago guys, and it was. There was just only a dozen of us. That was small. It was a little community, So I worked on those records.
Kind of responsible for a lot of stuff happening, though, of that small group of people.
Yeah, it was a small group, though. It really was. I mean, now it's a massive group, but back then it was quite a small group, and there was more of the DJs than there were the support system of the DJs. So there was less of us than there were them. There wasn't many of us. We got shared between them. So the guy who could program the synths and get all the production work done with them, they could have an idea and you could facilitate the idea and get it down on tape for them as a DJ. Those guys were pretty few and far between. So we shared, it would sort of be 6 DJs to 1. That's how it kind of worked. And there was me, and there was a guy named Dave Darlington, and there was a bunch of different guys, and we all had different ones. And you didn't mess with each other's ones.
Okay.
So that's really how it worked, and it was an interesting thing,
Can I ask, just to sort of backpedal even further, what did your parents do, and how did that affect where you ended up?
Nothing. My parents were both teachers. They were. no musical background at all.
So not a musical family,
Nope.
not a. Yeah, so where does it all come from? Is it just, come on a bike, goes down to the music store? Is that the whole story?
I was in love with it from the time I was little, and then I just started playing in bands when I was 12 and 13, and it was really not a great thing, actually, between me and my parents at all. I didn't, my parents were so academic, they didn't want me to have anything to do with that, so they just totally rejected it. It was the people that, like the guy I told you gave me that early synth that helped me get to Berklee and kind of get my foot in the door with all that. And
so you kind of had a mentor
that
was outside of that,
yeah,
which is kind of interesting. But basically, you're still rebelling.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all just like kids. I'm waiting to get older.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to grow up. I've been waiting to grow up since then.
Yeah, it's a little bit overrated, but yeah, it's an interesting journey. When did the TV music thing kick in?
So late 90s, I had been in New York a long time at that point, probably 10 years or so almost. It was or almost 2000. I went to LA because I had been producing, I had probably been producing then for about 4 years solid. I moved to LA in the very late 90s. I had produced an album for Love and Rockets, and I was still very close with those guys. I wound up doing a tour with Peter Murphy, who I met through them. Mm-hmm. Wow. And Kevin Haskins from Love and Rockets and I started a company together, and we started we just kind of connected really hard making that album.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of carried on with that. And through that, I started doing a lot of music for TV. I mean, honestly, that was how I started doing television. A music supervisor back then called me and said, I'm trying to license this song from this Love and Rockets record. You're one of the writers. Can you help me clear it? And the record company had gone out of business or something. It was a weird situation.
Sorry, what year was this?
99 or so.
Okay, I'm with you. Yeah.
And I said, no, but I don't know how to, I have no idea, but I can make another one for you if you want. Huh. And she said, you can? And I said, of course. It's like, what?
I haven't run out of songs.
Yeah. It's like, wasn't that hard the first time?
Okay.
So I just did it again. I just made it was for a chase scene or something like that in a television show. So I just did it that night and sent her to her the next day. And honestly, that's what started it, because then she kept coming back, and then her friends started to come to me. Can you do something like this? Can you do something like that? Can you blah, 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 blah?
Yeah.
And so my really entrance into television music was doing, records that they couldn't do. And then Kevin and I, we wound up scoring a television show. We submitted music or something. I don't remember how it happened, but it was Michael Mann, director Michael Mann.
Yeah.
And we wound up working for him. He was the first TV show. And it was a really, again, you don't know when you're dealing with an innovator because you're just starting, so you're clueless and you have no idea what you're dealing with. But he was very innovative, He always has been, obviously, but it was it was a really interesting entrance into all of it. He was intense, and he would talk into a dictaphone like this.
Right.
He never talked. You'd all go for the meeting.
Yeah.
He wouldn't look at any of you. He'd just sit, watch the screen, talk into the thing, and you'd get it in the mail at night. It would get delivered to your door, all the notes. And so you were up all night, 24/7, revising and making notes and doing things. And so that was kind of my entrance into film and television music. And then I did that for about 15 years.
Is the appeal of that instead of selling things to lots of people for small amounts of money, you're selling to one person for a large sum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the music industry, obviously, around that very same time, 1999, obviously took a massive hit. But television and film didn't. What was interesting about it was 15 years later, moving from Los Angeles to Nashville.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're in the city where music's pure. You're not a musician for the television industry. You're a musician for the music industry. And those are very...
There's purity in that?
I guess in my mind there is. I guess it depends on how contaminated you are.
I have to say, you're the first person to put purity and music industry in the same sentence that I've heard.
Yeah, well...
But I do get what you mean, absolutely. So.
Yeah, and so it was hard, though, to see, by the time I moved to Nashville, they had really been hit by the whole thing, because the country music lasted a lot longer than the rest of it, but Nashville's not country music anymore.
No, for sure.
And once it changed, they got hit by it just like everybody else.
I mean, country's still there.
Absolutely.
But it's not just country.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, not even... It's a very balanced subset to the whole music community there now.
In fact, there's been a big discussion recently about some of the country music that is like, is this country or is it trap? It's like, where are the boundaries anymore?
Right.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, when you've got Kelsey Ballerini working with Chainsmokers and Maren Morris and Zedd and all those kind of, as soon as one does it, and it does what the middle did, everybody's going to do it. I mean, it works.
Yeah.
Country music started turning to pop music years ago. It worked great. And it's going to keep going farther and farther in that direction. There's no doubt about it.
Right, which is kind of interesting because there are always people who are trying to preserve a tradition, and I get that. But I'm always excited by when people kind of take the barriers away and go, what else can we mix with this? What other sorts of hybrids can we create? And I think that's where a lot of the kind of particularly musical innovation starts to kick in. I'm kind of really interested in one show in particular, which is kind of seminal, I guess, from a music perspective. It was Lie to Me.
Yeah.
So tell me about your approach to that show.
My approach to that show, when I think about my approach to that show, it's from the pilot perspective, because that was one of the shows that I started from pilot. And when you start a pilot, is just such a messy process. There's no filthier word to composers than pilot. It just makes us quiver. Because, it's interesting, we were talking about this at NAMM with a whole group of composers, and the audience was really fascinated by it. But when you do pilots, it's not when you do your first one, it's when you do about your 15th one that you realize what a pilot is. A pilot is a script that's been written over the course of years, and then shot over the course of a long time, and then edited 8 million times before it ever gets to you. And so you're getting it fresh, and you just have all these creative ideas, and everybody else is so already done, overdone, redone 15 times, and their perspective is like, and there's also a lot of problems with it that they've heard along the way when they're writing this line, or that actor's not very good. So they're always, we'll fix it with music. That was one I actually did with a couple of great producers named Sam Baum and Dustin. His name escapes me right now. They were a production team I had worked with before on a show called The Evidence. And I remember when they sent me the pilot, and it was just, so to me, the whole musical tone of that show I think of as the pilot. I think of as that opening scene to the opening pilot when
this is the airport scene?
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
okay. So,
and then going into that sort of first interrogation room, and just that whole thing was just, how do you kind of bring that whole thing to life? And I remember so clearly working on that so much, and just trying to find a really dark, kind of gritty, but percussive-y kind of thing for it, and make it come to life.
Was the pilot the first episode?
Yes.
Because that's not always the case.
Yes, it was the first episode.
Right,
yeah.
okay. Because that's that scene where basically, I mean, I don't know if people listening have watched it, but I recommend it. But basically, somebody who can tell when somebody is lying is about to pretend, essentially, to be somebody who is lying so that he can get caught. And, without spoiling too much of the story, but it's a really interesting setup. And it's in this kind of airport security context. And there's a tension in that, but there's a comedy in it as well, which is really nice.
Which there was a lot through that show, and that's one of the hardest things to work musically is tension and comedy at the same time. It's a very tricky thing. It's when you learn how to use space really well. You're supposed to learn it just making music. Really learn it when you're doing comedy and stress at the same time, because it's very hard lines to walk, and particularly with an actor like that, when you've got a guy that's very dry like that, so he can go from serious to comedy without it there being a beat at all to even play with, just in a look. And so you're really always walking this really tough line. But I really enjoyed that show. I always really enjoyed working with those two producers. And I think Sam now does Chicago Fire and those things. He's gone on and done a lot of things. He's a very, very talented guy. Yeah.
Games on the agenda? Is that next?
I did a little bit of games back in the day.
Yeah.
The tech. I had to kind of make a choice between games and TV, to be honest, because when I started doing games, the engine was changing so much, and you would have to keep up with it. It was like all of a sudden there was scripting, and you had to go to, up to Microsoft, and they'd give you this gigantic book to learn all this stuff, and you had to deliver in all these new formats. And so if you weren't really dedicated to that, there was no way to keep up with that.
You can't dabble.
Yeah, no, you couldn't dabble back and forth between TV and this. They were moving way. I mean, this is a huge issue for me, and we can talk about this forever, but it's funny because I never thought about it in this perspective like this, but what I felt at the time was there's no way to keep up with this because these people move really fast. They keep changing their engine, and their engine is how music is made. I mean, physically, how we make the music is tied to this freaking engine that they keep changing.
Yeah.
Well, that engine is why they make a shitload of money. That engine changing is why they're able to keep young audiences engaged for, and growing from Pong to, Fortnite.
Yeah.
That's why, and that was the early look at it, but that's why.
Sure.
What did we do?
But they're basically reinventing the musical instruments.
They reinvent everything along the way. If you told game developers they had to work on a platform for, they had to release their game in the same platform that it was released 15 years ago, they would die. I mean, they were just like, joking me? So they're always reinventing the technology to support the experience. They're reinventing the delivery system to up the game for the experience, which is why kids are so dialed into the experience constantly growing, and that's why they thirst for it.
Mm-hmm. So what's the next challenge?
For me, from here forward, honestly, the challenge is figuring out how to do that for music. That is the absolute challenge from here on. I'm good with everything else. I love making music. I'll make it forever. But for me, from here forward, it's how do we do what the game industry did from an innovation standpoint to make music an experience that's worth paying for kids, not live music. I don't want anybody to be confused that I'm talking about live music, because I know people pay for live music, but let's look at that as well. Think about concerts from back in the day to Coachella and South by Southwest and those things. The evolution of concerts has gone from 2 bands playing in an arena to 60 bands in a field with a tech festival and a book festival and a this and everything going on around it. It's a full-on experience, and they'll pay money for that because that suits the experience drive.
Right. But how do you get out of, all right, we need to make it kind of really appealing and potentially lucrative for a young audience without them going to a live gig, without making it gimmicky?
So I think that you got to really break the mold. Like the way we're working on it is to say, it's not about the music. I have no problem with the evolution of music's fine. Mm-hmm. It's the delivery system that's not able to keep up with the kind of delivery systems that keep young audiences engaged. So to me, the starting point was to reinvent the delivery system. And so since we all have a powerful computer in our pocket, why not use that and reinvent the delivery system? So what we did was we actually from the ground up designed an engine that can play back an album, a single, in a multi-track format. As well as 2 remixes of the single in a multi-track format, but then be able to combine all the parts from all 3 of those versions and let you automate it, let you manipulate it, let you add your own parts to it, let you marry it to video, let you marry it to pictures, let you post it straight to social media, let you run contests with it, let you seek out things online and put together video clips that make a trailer and then marry it together with your own remix of the song from that movie and then win tickets to the movie. All sorts of experiences with music that help it. Look, kids perceive music right now as part of content, right? Kids are content creators now. I don't see young people striving to make music. They want to make content, and music's a component of content. Yeah. So let's give them the ability to do that with music. Let's get them paying artists and buying music in a way that they're comfortable doing it. They're never going to go back to buying music. We've told them it's free. Mm-hmm. So, but they'll pay for everything. So the way we do it all with virtual currency. So you earn your way through to being able to unlock all different experiences that help you build all cooler content and that help you then enter all these challenges and do all these things. And really, as you're earning that or buying it, you're actually paying for what would be like double what it would be for downloads. Right. So you're actually paying the artist.
But it's participatory.
It's participatory.
Yeah.
It's all about putting you into it. Kids have to be part of things. They have to be, it's about being able to personalize it, share it, and, really, customize it. And, it's fascinating when you show somebody and you say, hey, you just created your own version of that song you love. Do you want to buy it for 99 cents? There's no other way to keep it. You go, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Why would you ever buy it for 99 cents when you can stream? It'll be there again tomorrow to stream.
Yeah, but not your version that you're proud of.
That you're proud of.
Yeah.
And it's a way, so the way we did it was also a way that artists could function with, because it's all material that's curated from the artist. So it all works, it all sounds great, and they don't have to worry about it. So it's very pure too in an artist sense. So what I'm really excited about is to go back now and start working with artists in that format as a single, not as a single in remixes, but to be able to say to an artist, you have all different ways you perform this song, right? You could do it acoustically, you could do it electrically, you could do it this. Well, let's do them all.
Yeah.
And make it all work, and you'll have all three versions, and they'll all interact, and everybody can sit and make all their own anything they want. So it gives you kind of all the fun of everything, and it's also a cool learning tool. You can plug in a guitar and play to it, and chords are there, and the lyrics are there, and you can learn about effects and all that stuff too. So
and it's called
Stylus.
Fantastic, Doug. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Cheers. That's producer, composer, engineer, musical director, music supervisor, conference chair, and inventor, Doug Angelis. And that's the MTF podcast. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at Dubba, and MTF is at Music Tech Fest, all one word. In fact, pretty much everywhere, it's just Music Tech Fest. The MTF podcast is out every Friday, so if you haven't already, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app might be, wherever actually you're listening to this. And if you like what you hear, you can share, rate, and review us. It really helps other people who might be into this sort of thing to find us. Go and wash your hands, be safe, be healthy, have a great week, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.